Malik Scott, the trainer and I'm assuming close personal friend of Deontay Wilder, he often jumps between saying things that are very sensible to saying things that are outrageously absurd. But in this instance, he's talking sensible again, at least from my perspective. He thinks that a fight between his guy Wilder and Joe Joyce would be much tougher for Wilder than an Andy Ruiz bout. Now, it remains to be seen whether that's actually the case. People are writing Andy Ruiz off, and I can see why many of those people think that Joyce would have a better chance against Wilder. One, because of his chin, he's never been down as a professional, but also because of his size and his boxing ability. We tend to think of Joyce as this wrecking ball, the juggernaut, right? But he showed in the Daniel Dubois fight that when he wants to keep his chin out of harm's way, he's actually able to do it quite effectively. Granted, Dubois is not as tall, rangy, or fast as Deontay Wilder, not as sneaky, but you could also argue that Wilder is, has less balance than Daniel Dubois. He's maybe more sloppy. So perhaps Joe Joyce with that jab could be effective against Deontay Wilder. Maybe he doesn't have to go in there and have his chin tested the way people want to see it tested. Who's going to win in this battle of Joyce's chin versus Wilder's right hand? Maybe Joyce goes in there, boxes carefully, sticks a jab on Wilder and doesn't allow people to find out. Maybe he outboxes Wilder, right? So I can see the argument, basically, that people are making that Joyce will be tougher for Wilder than Andy Ruiz. Does Malik Scott really believe it as well? Or is it actually the opposite? Does he secretly think that Ruiz is a tougher fight and Joyce is an easier fight? So he's trying to sell the Joyce fight to the public rather than the Ruiz fight. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. Now, just to give you the quote directly, it's a pretty short one. He says, "At the top level of the division, there are not many fighters I'm interested in fighting," as in Wilder, his fighter Wilder. "Joe Joyce is a much better fighter for us concerning entertaining fights than Andy Ruiz. Ruiz would be more marketable because he's a former heavyweight champion, but Joyce is a much tougher opponent than Andy Ruiz is. Joyce would beat Ruiz easily. When I think of Joe Joyce, I think, how many could he take? And if he can take the hardest puncher in the history of this sport over and over again and not be dazed, which is almost humanly impossible, then obviously he'd be the toughest one." So those are the words of Malik Scott. And as I just said, I don't necessarily think the Joyce fight will be that straightforward. Joyce can box when he decides he wants to do that, and he can keep his chin out of the way fairly well when he wants to. As far as Joyce being able to beat Andy Ruiz easily, I don't know about that. I don't know whether there's anyone out there that beats Ruiz easily. You could say that AJ beat him easily in the rematch, right? Well, yeah, he beat him easily in terms of points, but of course that wasn't Andy Ruiz in anywhere near the kind of shape he would need to be to make the fight more competitive. Ruiz is a very, very good counterpuncher. Perhaps the best counterpuncher in the division other than, let's say, Usyk. He throws very, very fast, sharp, and pretty powerful shots on the counter, like no other heavyweight. And so when you're going in there, it's not so straightforward as to just start letting your hands go and hit Andy Ruiz with this and that, because very fast shots are coming back at you. And in fact, the Luis Ortiz fight was a contest between two of the best counterpunchers in the division. Ortiz himself is a good counterpuncher, but in the end, Ruiz proved to be the better of the two in that regard. So Ruiz against Joyce, I mean, if Joyce stays on the outside, doesn't get involved, then maybe he could beat him. But I don't know. That's an interesting fight in itself. As far as who's more difficult for Wilder, Joyce or Ruiz, it's all a matter of opinions. We can only speculate. I suspect that they may be equally as difficult for Deontay Wilder. I reckon they're about equal in difficulty, at least in my head, the way I break it down. Because Joyce isn't going to be able to counter the stuff that Wilder is doing the way that Ruiz can. And you see, when someone hits you with shots that fast on the counter and hurts you, and I've got no doubt that Ruiz has the power to hurt Wilder, when that has happened a few times, it makes you hesitant to throw your shots. You start thinking, okay, well, I can't let the right hand go as much as I want to because this guy's counters are ridiculously fast. And he's countering in combination. It's not just one shot coming at me, it's several. It changes the whole dynamic of the fight. Joyce doesn't really bring that to the table. So Deontay Wilder can continue throwing the right hand and he can take more chances throwing his right hand against Joyce than he can against Andy Ruiz, in my estimation. As I say, with Joyce, the issue for him, I would imagine, is going to be Joyce's jab. And if Joyce can manage to maybe wear Wilder down a bit, down the stretch, soften him up with a jab, then maybe he can maul him like a grizzly bear, the way he does with so many of his opponents. But I think it will be the jab that will be the main issue for Wilder. But Wilder will be able to take lots of chances, I think, with the right hand, because Joyce is not really going to counter. He's not fast enough to be hitting him with the kind of counters that Andy Ruiz could hit him with. So, the main argument, I guess, that Joyce is more difficult for Wilder is the fact that potentially he has the ability to stay away from the right hand a bit better than Ruiz because of that height and reach he has and the jab and mobility, right? Joyce, despite being a very big man, he's got fast feet. Always had fast feet. I mean, go look at his pro debut against Ian Lewison. The guy was dancing all around the ring. So he's always had fast feet. Andy Ruiz doesn't have fast feet. So again, the argument is he can't stay away from the right hand to the same extent that Joyce can. Hopefully we get to see both fights. In an ideal world, we'd see Deontay Wilder versus Ruiz, and we'd see Deontay Wilder versus Joyce, and maybe even Joyce versus Ruiz. I'm up for all those contests. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below.